Hello and welcome to the 105. It is National Signing Day. I am Cooper Patagna. That is the DOS 24/7 Sports Director of Scouting, Andrew Ivins. And Drew, it's that time of the year, man. February, National Signing Day. Doesn't seem as busy, but we got a lot to talk about today. So first, let's take a look on what's on tap. Like we said, today is the day. We'll be previewing that here on the 105. We'll also talk about Ty Haywood, the first little bit of news this morning, committing to the Michigan Wolverines. They're up to number 6 in the team rankings. We'll also preview top 247 edge Zahir Mathis's commitment later today. And we'll do a deep dive of the projected Big Ten versus SEC starting quarterbacks as well. But Drew, let's start with that news this morning of Ty Haywood committing to Michigan, former Alabama commit, ranked inside the top 50. They already have 5-star offensive tackle Andrew Babalola in the boat. You and I, not that long ago, we're kind of talking about, how does this feel under Sherrone Moore in terms of the recruiting? Well, they ramped it up. You throw in Babalola, you throw in Bryce Underwood, you look at the work that they've done in the portal, Justice Haynes, Trey Williams as well. Now you add in Ty Haywood. Cherry on top, pretty good, right?
Yeah, highest ranked recruiting class for Michigan since 2017. I think that was the year before you arrived there in Ann Arbor. And that 2017 group, I mean, Nico Collins, Kwity Paye, Avery Thomas, Benjamin St. Justy, James Hudson, Donovan Peoples-Jones. It was a really, really good group. And I think Sherrone Moore, hey, you know, what's it going to look like in 2025? They end the season on such a high note, beat Ohio State, beat Alabama in the bowl game, and you can see the future there. So 2025 might be setting the table, I think, for 2026, because Michigan's kind of young, right? Yeah, they got some seniors coming back. They're going to be off to the NFL after, this time next year. But I really like the direction that Sherrone Moore has this thing headed. And you want to talk about Ty Haywood. Cooper, it's the year of the offensive tackle, right? He was a guy that we had as a 5-star prospect. He ended up finishing outside the top 32. Again, right? We like a lot of these guys. 9 offensive linemen inside that 5-star range. And I think a lot of the guys outside that weren't in there have a chance to potentially be day 1 picks at some point down the line. They have that potential. And specifically with Ty Haywood, you dig into his junior tape, right? You turn on what he did as a senior. Got a little bit of a drop-off, but he's a big, athletic, functional athlete. And you think about Sherrone Moore, what he is known for, offensive line play. I think if you're a Michigan fan, you have to be excited about the future of this group because him, Andrew Babalola, potential bookend tackles for Bryce Underwood, the number 1 ranked prospect in the class of 2025.
Reminds me a little bit of Alex Leatherwood, who I think a lot of Michigan fans thought they were going to get late in the process, and a guy that played tackle, played a little bit of guard, ended up going in the first round of the Las Vegas Raiders years and years ago. But in the case of Haywood, Drew, I kind of think right tackle, swing tackle versatility, I think he's going to end up being a guard long term. What do you just think about maybe the player in terms of the fit here at Michigan, maybe comparing that to Alabama? I mean, what do you think this guy in terms of the development curve or where we could see him potentially making an impact in Ann Arbor?
Well, this is probably going to sound a little bit crazy. I think he's a little further ahead right now than Andrew Babalola, who's our number 2 ranked offensive tackle. We love the upside when it comes to Babs, as you call him. But he's still, 2, 3, 4 years away. We got him in San Antonio at the Navy All-American Bowl. He had the near longest arms there, 37 inches. And that's someone that's only been playing football for a few years. Now, on the flip side, Ty Haywood playing in a high classification there in Texas, right? He has been coached up. He's got the technique from his time at Denton Ryan. So I think he's going to be a little bit more ready to go. I agree with your designation. All right. Hey, swing tackle, maybe potentially a guard. Hey, Michigan's going to have to break in kind of a new starting 5 here in 2025, but reinforcements are on the way. And Ty Haywood, Andrew Babalola, I think the big thing is they're not in a position where they're going to be thrust into action year 1, right? You can put them on ice. You can get them in those developmental strength programs and allow them to not only get the technique dialed in a little bit more, but get the bodies right. And that's where Michigan has really capitalized over the years, right? That program, player development program, right? Get the players that have the traits. Ty Haywood has it. Andrew Babalola has it as well.
Sherrone Moore, Michigan, finishing strong this morning, National Signing Day with Ty Haywood now in the boat. Guys, just a reminder, you are locked in to the 105. You can find us every Wednesday right here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel and also wherever you find your podcasts. Make sure to scan your QR code right there. And if you're watching on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel, please make sure to like and subscribe. Drew, there is some other movement this morning. Zahir Mathis top 247 edge, a guy that we've gone back and forth on a lot from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and you see the body type, 6'6", 225 pounds. Those guys are really hard to find. It's coming down to Maryland, Florida State, Big Ten, ACC battle here. The crystal ball currently favors the Terps. We'll see what happens there. Tell us a little bit about the player and what you like about him.
Measurements, elite physical traits with Zahir Mathis, 6'10" wingspan, right? 35-inch arms, 35 and a half actually. This is a kid where I think when you study him, right, it's like, okay, is the physicality, is his pass rush moves ever going to be able to match what he has from a physical standpoint? He is extremely gifted. He is blessed to have that length. You see it sometimes when he comes around the edge. Cooper, I think the most encouraging thing with Zahir Mathis is how he looked in Orlando at the Under Armour All-America game. You go to the actual game after 2 days of practices, 3 tackles. He had a quarterback pressure where he's hitting the guy, ball pops up in the air. He also batted down a pass. So you see the flashes. I think with Zahir Mathis, it's just going to be a thing of he needs to get more consistent, right? He's primarily operated out of a 2-point stance. Could he eventually kick inside? A little narrow. Body weights fluctuated all over the place as a kid that was listed at 230, down to 211. I think he's eventually going to need to get to 245, 250, especially if he's going to anchor potentially in the Big Ten, right? Maryland seems to be in the best position with Mike Locksley there. So you see the flashes. I think everything needs to match what the athlete is, what those measurables are, but certainly a talented player in terms of what he could be at some point down the line. And we always look for production, right? 6 sacks over the past 2 years, right? So this isn't a guy that has really done it there in high school. So you're still waiting for it all to kind of come together.
Your recent player comp was one of my favorites, Anai White. And a lot of people might be looking at that and saying, who is Anai White? Anai White was a former top 247, kind of underdeveloped, long, lanky pass rusher, signed with Texas A&M, now back in the state of Pennsylvania, going to play for Penn State next year. But Drew, really liked the player. I think maybe a DPR designation. And like you said, I think the biggest question mark at this point, outside of production, the mass, can he handle the run game? We'll see what happens. Big Ten, ACC, we'll see. But he will be making a decision. He'll be making it right here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel at 2 o'clock Eastern Time. So make sure you stick around for that. Like I said, Zahir Mathis, one of the top pass rushers coming off the board right here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. And guys, if you are locked into 24/7 Sports, just a reminder, 60% off of annual VIP membership. That ends February 6th at midnight. Make sure to get there, get square, and get it done. Lock in with 24/7 Sports. And Drew, with that said, let's talk. I do want to continue to kind of talk a little bit about Maryland a little bit because they are one of those classes that is kind of hanging around the top 25, right? Has the potential to move into the top 25 today if they land a guy like Zahir Mathis. They've done some interesting things, especially at the quarterback position. You, Hudson Standish, the rest of the crew have really kind of given this class and Mike Locksley their flowers. What do you like so far about what Maryland has done this cycle?
They're getting blue chip talent. If you think about Mike Locksley, 33-41 during his time there in College Park. More notably, Maryland is 16-40 in the Big Ten. They had 3 straight winning seasons, which capped off with bowl victories. This past year, they went 4-8. I think Mike Locksley's under some pressure here. And the fact that he's able to get a recruiting class that could move to number 24 with a commitment from Zahir Mathis says a lot about his ability to get talent inside that building. That's what he was known for during his time many years ago at Alabama. But yeah, Malik Washington is the headliner. There's some other individuals you could throw in there that we like. Zymir Smith, in-state athlete, 2-way guy. I like the running back they got out of DeMatha, Bud Coombs. I think he's a 3-down back. You can throw it out of the backfield. But Malik Washington is the name you need to know. Our number 5 quarterback right now. I think there's some Cam Ward to his game in terms of how he moves around in the pocket, his confidence, his ability to toy with opposing defenses. He's a bit fearless. He won 3 straight city championships there in Baltimore. This is a kid that was on my freaks list, right? He won a dunk contest, really, really talented basketball player. You see number 5, that ranking next to him. He's in a day 2 projection for us. That's because we believe in Malik Washington and what he's able to do. I thought as a senior, protected the football much, much better. He wants to win with his arm, but he's one of those guys, much like Cam Ward, when the play breaks down, he's not afraid to evade the pocket, and he's hard to get down in the open field. So really like him. And, Coop, what I also think is interesting as we were preparing for signing day, you look at the top 5 quarterbacks for us in the class of 2025. 4 of the top 5 are headed to the Big Ten. Obviously, Bryce Underwood going to Michigan, number 1 player. Keelan Russell, number 2. He's off to Alabama after they flip him from SMU. Number 3, Tavian St. Clair, headed to Ohio State. Number 4, Hassan Longstreet, headed to USC, which is obviously in the Big Ten. And then you got Malik Washington at number 5, committed to Maryland, which is in the Big Ten as well. We always talk about the quarterbacks. That's what drives conversation. I just thought it was notable, right, as our rankings, finalized after the All-Star season. Hey, 4 of the top 5 arms headed to the Big Ten.
And we're going to talk about that in just a moment here, but I want to finish with the Terps and what they did in the transfer portal. They bring over a really talented arm, Justin Martin, a guy that hadn't played a lot of football, started against Penn State for UCLA in spot duty last year. That's going to be interesting because I know our team thinks that Malik Washington is one of the more day one ready arms in the entire cycle. They bring over another guy, offensive tackle Latrell Perry from Central Connecticut, Jaleel Farouk from Oklahoma, a guy that was banged up last year. They hope they can get him back into form, and a new offensive coordinator in Pep Hamilton as well. So a lot of new blood for Mike Locksley in College Park for the Terps. We'll see what happens next season. But let's get back to that point in terms of what you were talking about the Big Ten and the SEC quarterbacks and the contrast, Drew, just in terms of, I would say, the veteran experience, right? And when you're trying to project this out, as you and I were before this show, hey, who are the teams that you kind of feel confident going into next year in terms of teams that you say, you know what, if I had to put money down right now, that I would bet today more than likely because of the quarterback play that they would be in the college football playoff conversation. You kind of move over to the Big Ten a lot more than to the SEC. And with that, Drew, let's take a look at some of those starters here in the SEC. The lack of experience stands out, especially at the top, right? You look at some of these guys here, Ty Simpson, DJ Lagway, 7 starts, Garrett Nussmeier coming back for year 2 in Baton Rouge, Austin Simmons, what does it look like post-Jackson Dart, Arch Manning, the former number 1 player, Marcel Reed, can he take that jump from year 1 to year 2 in College Station, Drew? The SEC, a contrast of experience and top-level talent than what we've seen in the past. They have it, but can they reach peak performance?
Cooper, kind of brings me back to, this past August as we headed into the 2024 season. I wrote something for CBS Sports, and it was, hey, will the 5-star quarterbacks please stand up? And that group was Drew Aller, Cade Klubnik, and Connor Wegman. If you think coming into this past year, we had seen flashes from those guys. They had started games, but I don't think they were proven commodities in any way. I think the group was collectively like 2-6 against top 25 opponents. Yeah, there were some flashes, but consistency was a big issue. We exit the 2024 season. I think we feel good about Drew LR. I think we feel good about Cade Klubnik. Connor Wegman, he gets injured. He transfers to Houston. So when I look at the SEC, you saw a lot of 5-stars there. Guys that me and you ranked very high. DJ Lagway, Arch Manning, Jackson Arnold. I mean, there's guys we like. Nico Imalieva. Are we betting on them to win a playoff game in 2025? I think that is a big question. And the other thing, Cooper, where my mind goes is, I think when you look at the projected starters across all of Power 4 football, this is really the first year where we don't have some of these, COVID guys that got the extra year. There's not a lot of, experienced guys that are coming in and stepping into contenders. It's just very, very unproven in terms of what the conference has. I mean, what quarterback would you say, you feel the most confident about in the SEC in terms of, all right, I think this guy can get their school to Atlanta. I think this guy can get them to the college football playoff. Yeah, again, we like what a lot of these kids did in high school. We like what we've seen flashes for them at various points through their career. But really, there's not this starting quarterback that you're like, yeah, I'll take that guy in a playoff game tomorrow.
It's got to be a little bit of faith, right? In these guys that we projected, and the former number 1 player, you asked that question, who would you feel the most confident in the SEC out of the starting quarterbacks that could win a playoff game? I put money on Arch Manning. I put money on DJ Lagway. I thought we saw enough last year. Garrett Nussmeier is another guy, and here's really kind of the wild card. I'm really excited about Austin Simmons in a strange way where Jackson Dart is getting a lot of day one love from NFL evaluators. I think Austin Simmons is a guy possibly with the highest ceiling out of that group, comparing him to his former predecessor. So we'll see what happens there in the SEC. Drew, let's quickly take a look at the Big Ten and those starters as well, kind of driving home the point of what you were talking about with some of those guys in the league. I don't want to put you on the spot here, but you love the Nittany Lions going into next year with a guy like Drew Aller coming back.
And I do, because I think Penn State has the deepest offensive line in the country, right? I think they are, 10 deep. They're going to have a battle for right guard in spring camp. It's Cooper Cousins, our number 2 ranked offensive lineman last cycle, Javon Williams, a former 5-star recruit, and then TJ Shanahan, who transfers in from Texas A&M. It is an embarrassment of riches. You think about Penn State. Also got the 2 running backs coming back. We're going to talk about it later on today when we break down every top 20 team on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. But yeah, I think you feel good about Penn State. Luke Altmaier, that's a name that comes to mind there at Illinois. What he was been able to do the past few years. He's an experienced guy, right? He's ready to go. How about Aiden Childs there at Michigan State? A lot of hype coming into 2024. We knew the Spartans weren't going to be ready as they changed coaches, kind of new faces, new places. What does he look like in 2025? And I do think there's question marks. Ohio State, Julian Sayin, what does that look like? Another 5-star quarterback we had. A lot of good buzz this time last year about Julian Sayin, how he's looking under when Bill O'Brien was expected to be the offensive coordinator there. Then it was Chip Kelly. Julian Sayin's already on his 3rd play caller, and it's been, less than a year and a half there in Columbus.
Yeah, the good thing about that, right? You still got Jeremiah Smith. You got Carnell Tate. You got Brandon Innes. You got Max Clare, the number 1 tight end, coming over in the transfer portal as well. So there's an embarrassment of riches that Julian Sayin is going to be able to step into for a young quarterback. That is probably the best situation in the entire country for somebody with his skill set to succeed. So the Big Ten, the SEC, obviously a contrast in talent when it comes to the signal callers. A lot of guys will be wait-and-see mode on. Drew, one of the other things that I wanted to talk about, the top 100 for the 24/7 Sports Transfer Portal rankings came out yesterday. Myself, Clint Brewster, the rest of the team here at 24/7 Sports have been hard at work, and you think about some instant impact guys. For me, I got a handful. I could go down, run a list, right? John Mateer comes up, Rasul Faison, the running back from Utah State, going to South Carolina, replacing Rocket Sanders. You think about Will Helt. Dabo Swinney doesn't jump into the portal a lot, but Will Helt, a perfect fit next to guys like TJ Parker, Peter Woods. I want to ask you, is there 1 or 2 guys maybe in your mind that you're kind of looking through that list yesterday, or maybe some former highly touted guys that you're saying, you know what, maybe that first fit didn't work out. Maybe it's going to be a bounce back year at a new program for these guys where they can really settle in and excel.
I want to get your opinion on Carson Beck, right? Number 1 at the top, headed to Miami. I don't think a lot of people have talked about the injury there, right? He's going to miss spring football, UCL in the elbow there. How convicted were you as this board kind of came together that he was the top guy?
I think one of the most established quarterbacks. You feel good about the production. You feel good about the games played. You talk about a guy, he's only, for all the criticism, he's only lost 3 games, right? So you think about that, playing at Georgia, elevating that program, and obviously strong offensive line, strong run game. But he really missed Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey this past year, and you see the impact both of those players had on Sundays. You understand that. Miami's got to answer the same question. Isaiah Horton's gone, right? You bring over C.J. Daniels from LSU. JoJo Trader had a good bowl game, but he's still a young, inexperienced guy. Who's going to step up there? They bring over Alex Bowman from Tulane, but is that the guy that you're going to rely upon as well? They got some young guys that are willing and certainly capable to step up, but I trust Carson Beck. The biggest thing Miami needed to do, which is what they should have done last year, is what they did in the secondary. Adding guys like Zachariah Poyser, Emmanuel Carnley, Ethan O'Connor. You go down the list. They did a really, really good job there. So the floor feels higher here for Miami. So really going to be fascinating there. But I think Carson Beck, good fit. I think the biggest thing you brought up is the health. Can he stay healthy, and does Miami have enough around him where I think Miami is certainly a talented enough team to win the ACC? They can't do what they did last year, lose 3 out of the last 4, and we'll see what happens.
Another kind of position group, right? 2025 when it comes to the high school ranks, year of the beef, right? I said it, 9 offensive linemen finish as 5-star prospects for us. That's the most in the 24/7 Sports era. What is the market like for these big bodies, right? And I think you guys kind of jumbled up, hey, maybe the pecking order a little bit when it came to those top tackles. Everyone's trying to grab them. Oregon's grabbed some. Ohio State's grabbed some. what are you seeing in terms of, all right, how aggressive these teams have to be, and how convicted are you on some of these guys that are at the top?
It was pretty interesting coming off a trip to Mobile, working with Rick Spielman and Ryan Wilson, and you see guys that you and I scouted and you kind of have an intimate knowledge of, and Josh Conerly really being the guy that if you talk to any NFL evaluator and they said, all right, we feel pretty confident that this guy is going to go anywhere from mid to late round one. And you look at Josh Conerly, and Josh Conerly coming out was the number one offensive tackle, I believe, in 2022 out of Rainier Beach in Washington. He was a raw kid. He was a big, long kid. He needed to fill out. He redshirted at Oregon. He's played the last couple years, and probably a guy that could have benefited from coming back to school, but the way that the college game needs offensive tackles, so does the NFL. Everybody's looking for those guys. And the word that got tossed around with Conerly was raw. So when you look at a guy like Isaiah World, who has 30-plus starts under his belt at Nevada, he's 6'8", he's 300 pounds plus, he's lean, he's athletic, he can anchor, he can move, he can do all these things. None of these guys are perfect, and they all come with some type of flaws. But you look at Isaiah World, and I'm comparing him to a guy that's going round one, and the way that I looked at him at the beginning of the evaluation process in the portal to then coming off that trip in Mobile was entirely different. The confidence and the conviction in that player and the way that he projects to the NFL, you start to understand what NFL evaluators are looking for. And I think we've been a little bit too harsh, too critical on some of these guys. This is a really incomplete developmental position. So the position versatility really kind of stands out. And these guys, everybody's different. Our third-ranked tackle in the transfer portal class, Howard Sampson, a guy who started 12 games at left tackle at 6'8" and 320 pounds last season for North Carolina. He's excellent in the run game. He's got a long ways to go in pass protection, but you consider the fact that he's probably playing out of position. He's going to be a right tackle at the next level, maybe even a guard, and then you feel better and better about what this kid is going to be. So it's really an incomplete evaluation process where you have to account for the level of grace that these big guys are getting because they're just so hard to find. But it was my favorite position to evaluate in the portal because it was the hardest to figure out.
One team you've just been gushing since I got to the studio here in the offices at 24/7 Sports, LSU. And I'm going to admit, are they still the number one transfer portal class after all the movement there on Tuesday? Two guys for me: Patrick Payton, edge rusher coming over from Florida State; Jack Pyburn, edge rusher coming over from Florida. How convicted are you on these two individuals? And they're kind of contrast each other, right? Like Patrick Payton, this big, long individual, or Jack Pyburn, it's like my hair is on fire. He played a little fullback down the stretch for the Gators there after their bye week. Someone I had a ton of exposure to. I mean, this kid was committed to Memphis, right? Then it was a Florida State battle right before signing day, I think 3 or 4 years ago. I mean, he's fun to watch. What do you expect of those two as LSU tries to rebuild that defense?
They're the exact opposite, right? Because when you talk about Peyton, the first thing that comes up is this uber talented 6'5", 6'6", long, athletic, rangy edge rusher. And we know those guys come at a premium. He had the production earlier in his career. He's tailed off. I think a lot of people would quick to point out the lack of consistency, especially against the run. But when the motor is on and it's clicking for this guy, is a round one talent, right? But that's the biggest question that he's going to have to figure out in Baton Rouge. And if you're LSU, this is a great deal for them, right? They need a pass rushing presence like Patrick Payton. They have not had that in quite some time. Braden Swinson was tremendous last year, but Patrick Payton is a different category when he is playing at a certain at a really high level. The opposition of each other in terms of the contrast comes. Pyburn, like you said, is motor, right? He is a overachiever. He's a guy that's going to be playing with his hair on fire, like you alluded to, play in and play out, and he's great against the run, but he can give you some pass rushing upside. Those two off each other complement each other really, really well, and I like it for LSU because LSU's saying, hey, Jack Pyburn, you have an opportunity to come in here. We're going to expand your reps, and you're going to be a guy that we're going to rely upon. Where I think in Florida he was the third guy, right? You look at Patrick Payton, it's 1 year. You have 1 year to figure this out. So they expect to get Patrick Payton's best shot as he's auditioning for the NFL. So I like the way LSU has put it together, and you look at what they've done on offense. Nick Anderson coming off an injury by way of Oklahoma, great freshman year. Barian Brown they get from Kentucky. LSU, in my opinion, was a team that was a bubble team going into the transfer portal cycle, I think with what they've done, they firmly played themselves in to a college football playoff team in 2025.
All right, if LSU is your darling, LSU grad, just gushing about them. Yeah, we didn't need to mention about that. All right, give me a team that no one's talking about, right? That you put together, the top 300 transfers. You think, all right, this group is going to break through. You're looking at the futures. Hey, maybe it's not like national title, but all right, I really think these guys have done more than people have noticed.
Two teams, Mississippi State, who I've talked about at length, I think, over the last couple of weeks, and then Wisconsin, who I haven't really talked about. And you and I have talked about, like, the importance of this year for Luke Fickell, and it's only going to get harder because they lost a really bright, young, brilliant young mind yesterday, and Max Steinecker, who is now going to go to USC with Chad Bowden. But what they were doing, what they've done at the point of attack on defense, you think about some of the guys that they've added, edge rusher out of Louisville that I really like in Rieger. They also get Gardner out of Grambling, Tyrese Fearbury, who they got out of Wisconsin. They've done some really nice things. Perkins, a defensive lineman out of Tennessee Martin. They have fortified the trenches, especially in the Big Ten. They needed to get more physical. They needed to get bigger. They needed to get more athletic. I love what Wisconsin has done there on the defensive line. So shout out to Luke Fickell. We'll see what it looks like. It's not really defense that I'm worried about. Offensively, they got to get better as well. And Mississippi State, Drew, I'll say this. It's hard for Mississippi State to do and acquire the type of talent that they acquired this portal cycle via high school. And a lot of these guys are very talented kids that hadn't played a lot of football, right? And I think that's the way if you're Mississippi State, you're card counting, right? So you're trying to find and exploit the vulnerability in the process, and I think Mississippi State has done that. So the portal, the high school, today is the day where it kind of all collides. So looking forward to talking about that more.
Before we get out of here, this just came to mind to me. Mississippi State loses Michael Van Buren. He's going to go back up Garrett Nussmeier at LSU. Their quarterback room, I kind of like it a lot. You got Blake Shapen, redshirt senior, right? He's got a ton of starting experience. We saw it on the screen, 28 starts. Luke Kromenhoek comes over from Florida State, top 100 transfer. And then our guy, Camario Taylor, he signs with them as well. What Jeff Lebby has been able to do at that position, the ceiling of that group is pretty high.
Traitsy room that has some starting experience, a blend of a guy that shouldn't have played last year in Kromenhoek, and then just the total wild card. Camario Taylor is the one guy in this class, I think you and I agree, that if he hits, sky's the limit. And we're not talking about a first-round pick. Like, if it hits and it comes together, we're talking about a guy that could go top 10, top 5. He's got that type of ability, the fit in Jeff Lebby's offense, all those type of things. We'll see. Drew, good input. I loved it. We got a very, very busy day here at 24/7 Sports. Guys, I want to make sure you stick around as we have the National Signing Day show coming up at 1 o'clock Eastern until 5 o'clock Eastern right here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Guys, like I said, make sure to like and subscribe. Myself, Andrew Ivins, Emily Proud, and the rest of the gang here at 24/7 Sports will be with you throughout the entire day. Make sure to keep it locked right here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel.